everybody, welcome to Peony class. I'm Rachel, I'm one of the owners of Helen and Olivia Flowers, and I will be teaching your workshop today. So a couple of quick little housekeeping points before we dive into the good stuff. Everyone should have a beautiful white ceramic cylinder, which is what we're designing in today. You'll want to fill it with room temperature water and fill it about an inch from the top so that we don't overflow our vase. And you'll also want to grab some type of cutting tool for class. You'll notice as I teach, I switch between a knife and clippers. We have a link in our Instagram bio if you're interested in the exact type, but I love, this is a Swiss Army knife. And my favorite clippers are Japanese clippers called ARS shears. I highly recommend them. But if you don't have these, anything at home that is sharp, like scissors, garden shears, or a knife if you're careful, will work just fine. For class tonight, you should have hopefully received an ingredient list. It just runs you through the varieties of flowers and peonies that we're using, as well as chicken wire, which is what we're going to use for the armature inside of our vase. So picking out an armature for your vase is probably the most important step of your floral arrangement because it holds your flowers together and gives them a beautiful shape. So we love chicken wire, but you could also use, if you didn't have this, a Scotch tape grid over the mouth of your vase, or a floral pin frog would be great. So there's any number of things. With our chicken wire, we're going to take the sheet, which is about the size of a piece of printer paper, and we're just going to roll it first, so we make like a little burrito shape, and then we're going to curl in the ends just to make a sphere. So nothing fancy, it does not need to be super pretty. You want to try not to compress it too tightly because you want to leave room for your stems to kind of nestle into the spaces. So a big sphere, and then we're just going to pop it down into our vase. So that's all we need to get set up for design. So as we rummage through our bucket, the bucket is really full, which is great. So be careful that you don't damage any of your little stems as you're poking around. If you've taken class before, you know that there's a method to the Helen and Olivia design style. And we always want to start by laying our base, which is what the pretty focal flowers will get nested into. So that usually includes hydrangea and some foliage to kind of trace out our shape, and that's what we're going to be doing tonight. So everyone should have some baby green hydrangea. You can tell the baby green because they're the only flower that have a little plastic sleeve on them in your bucket. So go ahead and dig those out. And like I said, you've got a pretty packed bucket, so just be patient as you root around. All right, so I've got my baby green hydrangea, and I'm gonna go ahead and remove the sleeve off all of them. And baby green hydrangea is just a hydrangea that was cut out of the field when it was in its infant stage, so it's much smaller. It's a bright green color, which is a really pretty accent to all of the vibrant colors that we have of peonies. And this particular type of hydrangea is pretty lasting and is really ideal to kind of rim our vase. So anytime you're handling hydrangea or any type of flower, you want to make sure to remove the leaves off of the stem. If the leaves get into the water, they can gunk up the water and create bacteria. And also, it's just one less thing for the flower stem to keep alive and deliver nutrients to. So removing leaves is always a really good practice. With hydrangea, I tend to leave the topmost leaves attached to the stem because I think they're pretty. Whereas most other flowers, I'll just take everything off. So I'm just gonna strip away leaves. And if at any time you think I'm going too fast, just press pause on me. I do this for a living, pun intended, so I can sometimes go a little bit too fast. So definitely pause me if you start to get lost. So I've got just the topmost leaves on, but the rest of the stem you can see is really nice and clean. And I'm gonna go ahead and cut my stem to about the height of the vase. So I've got a 6-inch vase. I'm gonna cut my stem to about 6 inches, And when I cut my stem, I'm cutting it on a nice deep angle. And I'm gonna run around closer to the camera to show you what that looks like. So I've got an angled cut right here. And the reason I have an angled cut is because the more surface area you open up on your stem, the more water your flower gets to drink. So that is another really good housekeeping point. You always want to make sure when you are cutting your stems on your flowers and your greenery, it's always on an angle. So we're going to go ahead and make those angled cuts, and we're just going to allow our mini green to collar our vase. So it's just sitting right on the vase line, and the vase line, you'll hear that term a lot, is just the rim of the vase. So let the hydrangea sit right on the rim, and you really don't want it to extend too far out. So again, keeping my stems to about 6 inches long, and just letting these kind of curl over the rim of the vase. So now I've got a really gorgeous collar that's starting to camouflage some of my chicken wire, which is great. And I've now got a spot that I can nestle in all of my pretty greenery, which is my next step. So for greenery, we've got all of my favorites. So the first type of greenery that we're using is a gorgeous variegated ligustrum foliage. And I'm very particular about my ligustrum. I've tested all the local wholesalers. This is Delaware Valley variegated ligustrum. It's beautiful, I really love it. And it has more of a white undertone rather than yellow, which I really appreciate. So we're going to start with our ligustrum. And these pieces can be a little bit woody and branchy. So we're going to do a little bit of surgery to our ligustrum branches to break them down into more usable pieces. So remember that sweet spot for stem length is about 6 inches of stem that goes actually into the water. So just keep that in mind as you chop up your ligustrum. And again, we're going to remove the leaves on the bottom part of the stem. And then we're just gonna pop our ligustrum in, and we're gonna use it for coverage all over our arrangement. Now I like a little bit of a gardening feel to my design, so I'm gonna let my ligustrum hang out farther than my hydrangea. The hydrangea really should be the item that sits like closest in and tightest, and everything else is gonna sit on top of it. So as you can see, I'm allowing the ligustrum to really hang out over the hydrangea. And you can decide what shape your arrangement is going to be. So you could do a really beautiful round shape. If, for example, this is going to sit on a round table, or if you have a rectangular dining table, you might choose to make it more oblong. So I'm gonna go for oblong. I'm really into the oblong arrangements as of late. So I'm gonna make sure to really exaggerate 2 of the sides of my design to be a little bit more oblong. And we're just gonna fill this in all over. So what I would recommend doing with your ligustrum is getting like 2/3 or so of it in now and saving a little bit for the end of your design. It's always nice to have that insurance policy that at the end of the design, after all the flowers go in, you can kind of add a little band-aid of greenery where it's needed. So I'm gonna save a little bit to the side. Off camera is where it'll live. The next thing I'm gonna reach for is my beautiful umbrella fern. This is also a favorite. I love it because it's an airy element. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it and stick it into my design. Umbrella fern is one of those ingredients that will look absolutely insane if not done right, but will look really beautiful if done properly. So with the umbrella fern, what I recommend doing is tucking it in your design so that it bunches up a little bit like that. So tucking it in and kind of maneuvering it with my hands so that it's stuck a little deeper in. All right, perfect. So again, we're just creating a pretty little nest for our flowers to go into. Everyone should also have beautiful hosta. Hosta is one of those ingredients. Anytime I think of peonies, I think of 2 things that should always go with peonies. One, of course, is a hosta leaf, because they grow in the garden same time of year, usually right next to each other. So hosta leaves I love. And then I also love viburnum, which is one of our next ingredients. So they're like the peanut butter and jelly of springtime, right? We always think of peonies, viburnum, and hosta. So I'm gonna take my hosta leaf and I'm going to cut it and I'm gonna stick it off to the side. I love my hosta leaves to kind of sit off to the side a little bit. So here he is. All right, so our next ingredient that we're gonna pop in, so we've done in stages our hydrangea and greenery first, so we've made a beautiful nest for our flowers. And next I like to pop in our line flowers, which are flowers that are a little bit more linear, and they allow us to kind of extend the length of our design. So we have 2 line flowers that we're playing with tonight. The first is our stock, beautiful white stock, and you should smell it. It smells very clovey, pretty. And then we've got gorgeous California delphinium, which is really a pretty blue color. So we're gonna take our stock first, and we're gonna strip away the low-lying leaves. Stock is a beautiful flower, very fragrant, as not many flowers are fragrant anymore. And it comes in white, a couple of different shades of pink, a creamy buttered yellow, and peach. So this is one of our favorite ingredients. And then the delphinium as well, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up. So the delphinium, we're gonna sacrifice, sad face, the bottom blooms, and just preserve the pretty top blooms. Because again, we don't wanna wind up with anything falling into the water. Okay, so just nice clean stem. All right, so we're in business. Let's start with our stock since it's a little bit bigger. So we're gonna use these to extend the length of our design. So this is gonna hang out a little bit farther than your greenery and your hydrangea. And I'm going for an oblong shape, so I'm going to put my stock on opposite ends. And I like to make sure that they're not at the exact same angle because you never want to have perfect symmetry in your design. So one piece of stock is hanging a little bit lower, one sitting a little bit higher up on the opposite side. And then I'm going to pop in my pretty delphinium as well. Delphinium is always a favorite of mine. I love blue. I think blue is such a pretty accent, especially next to pinks. We made a beautiful design for a favorite client last year that was a lot of these same ingredients actually, coral charm peonies, delphinium, nigella, and we put it on our Instagram, and it's probably our single most requested design. Everybody wants us to replicate it. So this is a color combination that we really love and do a lot in our studio. So I've got my delphinium and my stock placed, and I had one little broken stock, so I'm gonna pop what's left of him into my design. All right, beautiful. So we're going to next reach for our pretty snowball viburnum. So snowball viburnum is really on its way out of season. We're towards the bitter end, but it's such a beautiful ingredient. And viburnum is one of those flowers that has a little bit of movement and bounce to it, which is really special. So we're gonna take our viburnum and clean off any of the low-lying leaves, and we're gonna mix this in all over our design. And it looks quite similar to the mini green hydrangea as far as color, but the nice thing about viburnum is it's got that bounce and movement to it that is so coveted in floral design. Everybody wants to have a little bit of movement in their design. So we're just gonna mix this in all over. And viburnum is a great ingredient to allow to kind of drape and spill out of your design. So don't be afraid to have a dramatic piece that kind of hangs out of your arrangement a little bit. I'll do that with this piece. I'm gonna put him a little bit lower down in my design and allow him to hang. So what a pretty little piece that is. All right, so next up, we're going to reach for our roses. And I know this is a peony class, but we're gonna mix in a few roses just because this is such a gorgeous complement to a peony. So Pink Expression garden roses, I'll come closer, are an absolute favorite in our shop. So much so that this is a rose that we put on standing order, meaning we are locked in to 100 or so of these every week. We bring them in for our retail orders, and our clients always request these roses. A lot of people who are peony lovers are also garden rose lovers. And so a garden rose is characterized by its petal count. Usually they have a lot more petals than a standard rose, and they're very soft and romantic looking. So this is for sure a favorite. So anytime we handle our roses, we want to condition them by removing all of our leaves. And then we also want to remove the outermost petals, which are called the guard petals. And these are never in good condition when they arrive at the shop because the guard petals have been banged up during transportation. So we're going to carefully, without touching the face of the flower, just handle the sides and remove the outermost petals. And every rose is totally different with how many guard petals need to be removed. Some roses you need to remove 1 or 2 guard petals, and other roses you'll need to yank off 5 or 6. So it doesn't hurt the rose at all. Just go through and methodically pull away anything that doesn't look great. And if you ever want to open your rose a little bit more quickly, roses are an interesting type of flower that actually will open from the warmth in your breath. So you can blow on your rose and they'll relax a little bit. That tip does not work on other flowers, so if you are blowing on a tulip or a hydrangea, you're just going to look crazy, so don't do that. But it does work well with roses. All right. So I'm making a nice little pile of my cleaned roses. All right. So let me just clear off my station. So now that my roses are conditioned, I'm going to go ahead and cut them to length. So again, we're aiming for 6 to 7 inches so that they sit really well rooted into the vase and are drinking well. And we're going to make 2 little pockets of roses. We're going to group our roses so that they kind of live together in 2 trios. So I'm going to pop these in. And this is a great time to play around with dimension. So don't be afraid to have one rose that recesses farther into an arrangement and one that pops out a little bit farther. So dimension can be really fun to play around with, or you can make it a little bit more pavé if you like the look of a more structured and organized design. So that's totally up to you. It's a fun little experiment to see what looks good. So I'm going to pocket 3 to one side and 3 off to the other. And the reason we like grouping is because your flowers tend to be more impactful when they're grouped. So that's also true in interior design. You'll often see groupings of similar items together. So I've got my roses now arranged in 2 little groupings. And we still have a lot of good prime real estate for our peonies. And we've got beautiful peonies tonight. So that's going to be the next ingredient that we play around with, are our peonies. So let's go ahead and grab these out of the bucket. We've got such a pretty mix of pink peonies. And the varieties that we're using tonight, we've got Coral Charm, which is probably the most coveted and popular peony variety. Coral Charm are that beautiful watermelon pink, and they've got an incredible yellow center, so really pretty. We also have a lesser known, but I think even more beautiful than the Coral Charm peony, which is called Etched Salmon. This is definitely one of the pricier peonies that we see on auction. This is coming in from Holland, and it's almost, I think, a dead ringer for the color of the pink expression, so it's going to blend beautifully in this design. And then our last peony is called Angel Cheeks, and that feels like the perfect name for this peony because it is really like a pretty soft angelic pink. And you'll notice that I'm really massaging and handling my peonies. So peonies are not like roses. You don't need to be scared about touching the face of the flower. You can really fan out the peony. If you were handling peonies out of your garden, you would definitely want to take an added step for conditioning them. Peonies in your garden tend to have a sap on them that attracts ants, and so it's not uncommon to get little stowaway critters in your peonies from your backyard. So if you are handling outdoor peonies, you want to throw them in a warm bath in your kitchen sink for a little while to remove that sap and remove the bugs. But these tonight, fortunately, are not buggy peonies. These are coming in from Holland for the most part, so they're really in ready condition. So we're going to take our peonies. I'd recommend starting with your biggest, most open peonies first, and then we'll work our way back to the smaller budded ones. So I'm gonna rip off any leaves, and then I'm gonna cut my stem to that magical length, that 6 to 7 inch length, and I'm just gonna start working my peonies in. And again, do not be super focused on having a perfectly pave design if you're wanting something that feels a bit more gardeny. So you can play around with the dimension that you place your peonies at. I would recommend, since we have a couple of different varieties of peony, really spreading the different varieties around so you get, pretty color from all angles. And I love to spin my design as I go. Your vantage point will definitely, change the perspective of your arrangement. So spin as you design. All right, so I'm gonna get these all placed. If you have any peonies that are budded, you could certainly do something fun and let one kind of fly away or hover above your design, which is what I'm gonna do. So this is an etched salmon peony that's more in bud stage, so I'm gonna put him a little bit higher up in my design, and he'll open up over the next few days, which will be fun. Okay. So peonies are in season now. May and June are really prime peony season, but the demand for peonies are so huge that many different growers from all over the world now grow peonies. So you can source pretty much 12 months out of the year. Alaska has popped up as a big supplier in our industry and actually grows during the really hot summer months that we hadn't historically been able to buy peonies. So Alaska's a supplier, Israel, Chile, the local peony farmers, you can buy them really from all over. So that, when I first bought the shop 10 years ago, was not the case. So they were a much more seasonal commodity 10 years ago. Now less so, but this time of year, May and June, is when you really see the best quality of peony. They're big and beautiful, and the pricing really starts to come down as well, which is nice. So wholesale, you will buy a peony during off season anywhere from, $4.50 to $7 a stem, whereas now we're starting to see peony pricing really come down closer to $2, $2.50 a stem. So that's great, and it'll continue to come down all the way through the end of the month of June. So really beautiful flowers for pretty reasonable pricing. And that's, of course, that pricing when you're buying at a big volume. So if you're buying smaller quantities, the pricing is not so competitive, but still coming down considerably. All right, so I'm gonna place my last peony, and I'm gonna give him, a nice spot right in the top of my design. All right, so I've got all of my peonies placed and my beautiful pink expression roses, and I hope you can see how gorgeous the pink expression roses are up against the peonies. From afar, they look quite similar because of the size and the color, but when you get up close, it's really neat to have the swirled petals on the roses next to the big fluffy peonies. All right, so our next ingredient that we're gonna play with is one of my favorites right now, and you can probably tell it from the smell that it's fresh mint. And mint is such a gorgeous, tiny greenery accent to kind of pop in between the peonies. So we're gonna start by stripping away the low-lying leaves. We're just leaving a few breaks in the leaf up top. And this is making me want to drink a mojito, so maybe I'll do that after class. And we're going to cut our mint to, maybe 7 or 8 inches, because I'm going to leave the stems long enough that I can kind of peek the mint out beyond the peonies. This is such a fun, summery touch. I really love this ingredient. A good floral arrangement is really beautiful from afar, but is also separately interesting and beautiful when you get up close. And I think little details like fresh mint are really interesting when you're sitting at a table, because it just gives you so many fun things to look at and smell. All right, so this is looking really gorgeous. I'm gonna next pop in some beautiful ranunculus. We're coming towards the end of ranunculus season, and although they're available 12 months out of the year, the really big, beautiful ranunculus are available early spring and are kind of tapering off now. So this is a pretty variety coming out of Holland. And we're gonna go ahead and again, just strip the stems so they're nice and clean. And the ranunculus is an ingredient just like the mint that I like to leave a tiny bit longer so that it kind of pops out beyond those big fluffy flowers. Okay. So I've got one little ranunculus right here, and I'm gonna pop my other one in. If you have any stowaway little ranunculus buds attached to the stem, you can certainly add those. They're fun texture and interest, but they're not gonna do much of anything in your design. So I'll go ahead and add mine in. And I've got a yuck petal on the outside of my ranunculus, so I'm just very carefully peeling it away. All right, so there we go. All right, so really pretty. I'm next going to reach for my blue Tweedia. This is a delicate flower and just a really pretty light blue. This is something that you're not gonna see from afar, but up close to your arrangement, you'll see how delicate and tiny it is. So we're going to remove the leaves, and as we do, you'll notice that this stem actually secretes a white sap. So it's a lot like milkweed. So if it gets on your hands, just wash. We're gonna go ahead and cut our stem and just use it to pop into the middle of our design. So it's nice to have some of these smaller flowers to just fill in any little gaps or voids in our design. All right, so I've got my Tweedia popped in, and my last ingredient was a total flop. So we were not originally going to have delphinium in our design. We were supposed to have beautiful blue nigella, but as you can probably see, the nigella came in not so remarkable and not so blue. So we still stuck it in the bucket. It's fun texture, it's like a little pod texture. It should have been a beautiful corn blue color, and I recommend that you Google search it to see what it should have looked like. But we're going to cut up these little nigella pods and just mix them in for some fun texture. This was a little freebie. And the delphinium is certainly checking the box for that pretty bright blue. All right. Very good. All right, so we've got all of our floral ingredients added at this point. I'm gonna clean off my station so that you can see the pretty finished product more closely. And the last thing for us to do is, if you saved any of that extra ligustrum from the beginning of class, you can add this in now. And the reason why I love saving a little bit of greenery is because I know that as a designer, I tend, when I am trying to do a beautiful garden design, to sometimes get a little bit too lush. So it allows me to go back and add some wispy pieces that fly away. So if you are in that same boat and you want to give your arrangement a little bit looser of a feel, this is a great little hack to mix in some pretty pieces of greenery that are floaty at the end. And I'm going to concentrate some lower in my design that kind of spill out the side of the base, like that guy. The cool thing about ligustrum is that it is kind of a bendy green, so you can very easily maneuver it with your hand to have a little bit of a lean to it, which is really gorgeous. All right, so my last piece and then I'm done. This was a fun design to make and really pretty. I'm going to enjoy this for sure. I'm going to take it home with me. I'll move to the side so that you can see it without me behind it, and I'll give it a little spin for you. So a really beautiful, predominantly pink with a little bit of blue peony arrangement. Now for taking care of your masterpiece, you want to make sure that you keep your arrangement away from any heat source and any bright sunny windows. So keeping it recessed a couple of feet out of a window is great. And then the most important thing is making sure that it gets water. So your flowers are thirsty and they'll drink a few inches of water out of your vase every day. So make sure you're topping it off, and in general, just giving it fresh water that's free of bacteria is really important. And I'll show you how easy that is to do thanks to our chicken wire. So this armature holds all of our flowers together really, really nicely. So you can take your whole arrangement out, set it down on a counter, hands-free, wash your vase out and put new room temperature water in. If that terrifies you, I get it. You can leave your flowers in the vase and you can just let your kitchen faucet run at a slow drip and it'll flush out the old water and put in new water. And I think that's about it. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop a comment below or message us. You know that we are very active on Instagram, so also feel free to reach out to us there. I hope you loved class, and even more importantly, I hope you love your beautiful flowers. Hope everyone has a great night, and I hope to see you in the next class. Bye-bye.